like clock. I can't stop. Fuck around, make my 40 pop. No popcorn, I pop pistols, reaming my body.
Alright y'all, today we're going to be doing a Boruto arc tier list. Now this right here, in my opinion, is probably like well overdue. Somebody actually recommended me to do this and I forgot my man's actual name. I'm pretty sure he's in my DM somewhere, but regardless, big shout out to my guy right there. And I want to do this for multiple reasons, so people could actually see which arcs I actually did really like. And also, if you guys haven't necessarily seen the whole Boruto anime, you guys can know which arcs you guys have to 100% watch. Alright, before I start the tier list, I do want to point out I did forget one arc, which is absolutely insane. I forgot the current arc that we are on in the Boruto anime. I'm going to dub it the Kawaki arc. I'm pretty sure that's probably going to be what it's actually named. Specifically, this is probably going to span from the Kawaki versus Gaara fight to the end of the Delta versus Naruto fight. This arc right here, in my opinion, it's an A tier arc, but it's really teetering on the S tier just because of the sheer fact that the fights in this arc were absolutely amazing. Manga wise, we did not anticipate the Kawaki versus Gaara battle to be as good as it was. People were actually saying that that fight might have actually been better than episode 65, Momoshiki versus Naruto and Sasuke, and that right there, you guys are gonna see where I ranked that in the actual tier list. But regardless, I'm gonna say that right there was an A tier arc, or this right here is an A tier arc, but it's really teetering. I want to put it at S tier so much. If Delta versus Naruto is an elite battle, if it's animated elite, it's an S tier. It's in the S tier. But regardless, to get back to the video. Now, just to start off, I think I'm gonna actually, do it by best and worst. Alright, so first things first, the best arc that I think we could all agree on is probably the last arc. Now, if you guys haven't necessarily seen this arc, man, because it is a manga arc, that right there is probably the best arc of the whole series. Now, of course, I know it's kind of biased, man, because it is the last arc of the Boruto series, but regardless, if it was like the last one, if it was like in the middle, if it was the first one, I would still say this arc right here is the best arc. And if you guys don't necessarily remember which arc this is, of course, it's going to be a bunch of spoilers, but it's pretty much Naruto versus Ishiki Otsutsuki when he entered the Baryon mode. That right there, that arc right there in specific, absolutely insane. I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys understand that. Now, the worst arc probably has to be either between Konohamaru and Chocho's arc. It was interesting for a minute, man, because we thought that Konohamaru could possibly get his wife in this arc. It turns out that that wasn't the case at all, which because of that, in my opinion, was probably like a waste of time. But I think if they would have ended off with Konohamaru actually getting a wife, it would have definitely been a lot better. But it turns out that it wasn't that. Now, the next bad one is going to be Chocho, of course. Let's be honest, bro, I don't even think I gotta elaborate on that. Now, one that's gonna be very controversial is gonna have to be this Urashiki arc. This right here specifically is not necessarily the time slip arc. The time slip is another one on this list, but the specific Urashiki arc, when he pretty much invaded the Hidden Sand Village, basically snatched Sasuke's chakra and all that, and pretty much had the manhunt for the One Tails. Now, the Urashiki arc, I personally believe it was definitely a decent arc. It wasn't necessarily terrible and it didn't necessarily live up to the expectations that I personally had. I'm gonna have to put it at like, I'm gonna say B for right now. I'm gonna have it at B. Now, the time slip arc, this right here was super entertaining for multiple reasons, but I still, just like the other one, I don't necessarily think it lived up to the hype. It didn't necessarily live up to the potential, I should say. I'm gonna put it at A just because of what it was. It was definitely a very good arc, very good animation, very good fight scenes, extremely satisfying. If you guys don't necessarily recall, Naruto actually met Boruto, Boruto actually met Neji, Boruto actually met Jiraiya, a whole bunch of satisfying things, pretty much super fan service in this arc, but it just did not live up to the expectations because of the fact that Urashiki himself went out completely sad. He went out fighting against, of course, Jiraiya, Sasuke, but he really went out fighting against two Genins. And I personally think that if Sasuke was like 100% health, if Sasuke would have utilized his Rinnegan for once in his lifetime, stole a bunch of people's chakra, came back, had a 1v1 fight with Urashiki, and potentially had Boruto and Naruto finish him off at the end, I think that would definitely have been at the S tier. But as of right now, I'm put it at A. A lot of people probably put it at C or D or possibly even B, and people will put it up there, man, because Urashiki just did not live up to the hype. And I understand that, but just for the overall arc, not just the Urashiki part, I'm gonna have to put it at an A tier arc. Now the next one's gonna have to be Chunin Exam. I don't even know how, like we don't even need to discuss this. Momoshiki versus Naruto and Sasuke was absolutely, still to this day, arguably one of the best fights anime wise. And of course some people might disagree with that because Kawaki just fought Gaara, but I think this right here still stands the test of time. Literally like 3 years later, still the best fight in the actual anime. Now not only that, but also the whole Chunin Exam was actually amazing as well. We got to see multiple fights. We got to see Shinki versus Mitsuki. We got to see Shinki versus Boruto and Sada. We got to see Sada versus some people from the Hidden Sand Village. Just a whole bunch of things. The Chunin Exam was definitely a very good arc, and even started off elite with a whole bunch of Amaterasus being laid out on the floor and everybody fighting against the white Zetsus, which is absolutely insane. But regardless, the next one that I definitely do want to talk about has to be the Boruto Gaiden arc. Now this right here, in my opinion, or Naruto Gaiden as some people might say, this right here is a difficult one for me. I'm gonna put it at A tier for right now, mainly because this arc right here was hyped and it lived up to the hype. Like, it actually lived up to the hype. Shin Uchiha was definitely a very good villain. Everybody hated him. People were calling him a knockoff Uchiha member. I think as time goes on, we're probably going to get to learn to appreciate Shin Uchiha even more. People are probably going to understand that Shin Uchiha was actually an insane ninja. Like, he was extremely strong. Not only just him, but also the clones as well. Sada getting the Sharingan, Sasuke coming back, finally being Sada, and of course Naruto fighting alongside Sasuke. Even though both of them were extremely nerfed in this particular arc right here, it was just overall a very good arc. Now the next one I definitely want to talk about has to be the Jigen fight, the Jigen versus Naruto and Sasuke fight. This right here, absolutely amazing. S tier fight, S tier arc, everything about it was completely S tier. Now this right here wasn't necessarily an arc. This right here was pretty much like a couple of episodes. Like, Jigen just goes into Naruto's house, tries to kidnap Kawaki. I'm not necessarily going to spoil the whole arc, but just regardless, it wasn't necessarily a long arc, but this battle right here was definitely an amazing battle, and the hype during this time was absolutely insane. Just like the other arcs on this list, this fight right here did actually live up to the hype, which was absolutely insane. Now at this particular time, we all thought that it was probably going to be impossible for Jigen to actually fight against Naruto, but the Boruto riders literally didn't hold anything back. They didn't hold any punches. They had Jigen literally teleport into Naruto's living room, which is absolutely insane, and everything started from right then and there. So absolutely S tier arc, S tier fight, S tier everything about it. I just absolutely loved it. Now the next one that I definitely do want to talk about has to be the Ao arc. Now the Ao arc, in my opinion, it's very interesting. I believe if you take into the account that, you know, plot progression wise, it basically, you know, furthered the plot a lot more than a lot of the other arcs on this list. I think you'd have to put it at an A tier. The fight with Ao versus Team 7 was absolutely amazing. Kawaki being shown for the first time, a whole bunch of stuff like that, those were absolutely amazing, which is why I have it in the A tier. Now the next one I want to talk about has to be the Genin mission. Get some of the little ones out of here. This right here wasn't necessarily a bad arc, it just didn't necessarily captivate a lot of people. The biggest thing about this arc right here was actually, you know, Konohama finally showing us his Rasengan. Of course, this wasn't necessarily the first time that we've seen Konohama use a Rasengan, because he used it in the first arc of the series, but regardless, this right here was the first time that we did see the quote-unquote wind style Rasengan from Konohama, which is absolutely amazing. And of course, Boruto, Sada, and Mitsuki got their first little action on an actual mission. Now the Genin exam, this right here was super interesting. I'm going to put it at the B tier. This right here, in my opinion, was very, very good, especially the end of the arc where Boruto actually did go against Kakashi, and it basically compared and contrasted Boruto versus Naruto. Boruto, at this particular point, it seemed like he was clearly better than Naruto, and I think that right there is basically a trend throughout the whole Boruto series. Boruto, skill-wise, I mean, was clearly better than Naruto. Now not only that, they also had a whole bunch of other people get involved. They pretty much had Mitsuki go Sage Mode versus Shino. Looked like Shino actually did have a little bit of trouble with Sage Mode Mitsuki, which is kind of super interesting. Of course, we didn't necessarily get to see the actual fight be animated, which is one of the biggest gripes that I do have about Boruto. The big fights, for example, Sasuke versus Urashiki before Boruto showed up in this arc right here, wasn't animated. Mitsuki versus Shino in Sage Mode wasn't animated. Like, elite fights like that, they just didn't animate. Now the next one that I definitely want to talk about has to be the Mujino Bandits arc. This right here, I'm gonna say it's a B tier. It's a B tier arc. Now it's kind of funny because when this arc was first introduced into the Boruto manga, everybody hated it. Everybody hated it. People were actually starting to hate Boruto because they were talking about trading cards in the Boruto manga. People were like, yo, what in the world is the Boruto manga on? But as soon as Boruto showed his Karma Seal for the first time, the whole thing changed. The Mujina Bandits arc basically marked the changing of the guards of the Boruto manga. After this arc right here, the Boruto manga has been straight hits, no misses, bruh, no misses. Every single arc since this arc right here, or every single chapter since this arc right here, has been absolutely fire. There might be some 8 out of 10 chapters, there might be even some 7 out of 10 chapters, but majority of the chapters since this arc right here were like 9 out of 10s and 10 out of 10s. It was absolutely amazing. And of course, as I said, when this thing was actually introduced, which is why I have it so low, it was pretty much like a D tier arc. People hated it, but as soon as Boruto showed his Karma Seal, it was like a B. It basically transformed into like an S tier arc at the time. But at this particular point, I'm going to put it at B tier. Let me know what you guys think about that arc right there. Now, the first arc of the Boruto series, this right here, a lot of people are probably going to get confused. I think it's an A tier arc. I really think it's an A tier arc. First things first, we got the most information about Boruto's Dojutsu in this arc right here. The Jogan was pretty much introduced in the first episode of the Boruto anime, and not only that, we've seen a lot of the abilities of Boruto's Jogan. Now, we didn't necessarily get to see everything, but we did get to see a lot, and of course, Toneri was in this arc as well. Just a whole bunch of things that was absolutely insane. I think when people go back and actually watch the first 15-16 episodes of the Boruto series, people are going to understand how good this first arc was. I think a lot of people didn't necessarily like it at the time because we were coming off of such an insane run with the Naruto series. Of course, the 4th Great Shinobi War, Sasuke versus somebody with a brand new Dojutsu, Shikamaru going on a very intense mission, and these were like literally huge missions, elite battles in those fights. And I think because of that, people didn't necessarily respect this man because they were basically reverting back to academy students doing academy student things. But honestly, if you look in the arc, I mean, there was a lot of cool things. Again, Boruto with his Dojutsu, a huge plot twist with Sumire actually being this elite ninja that pretty much betrayed the Hidden Leaf Village. Now, not only that, you also had Naruto getting involved, you had Kakashi getting involved, you had Sai getting involved. People are going to actually have a lot of love for this arc. Now, the next arc that I definitely do want to talk about has to be the Mitsuki retrieval arc, and I don't necessarily think it's actually called Mitsuki retrieval arc. I'm going to personally put this at an A tier. Now, at the time, similarly, people didn't like it. People didn't like it because it was just so slow. I feel like when first time watchers actually do start to watch Boruto and actually do run through this arc like extremely quick, like episodes back to back to back, people are gonna love it. I just think as a weekly anime, like you're getting an episode every single week of this, it was just difficult to watch. Like literally, I'm not even exaggerating, this arc was half of the year. It spanned for like 20, 25, 26 episodes, something like that. Just insane. If people would actually just run through this arc episode after episode after episode, probably watch half or possibly watch the whole thing in like 3 days or something like that, people are gonna love this arc. So because of that, I'm gonna have to have it at an A tier list. There's just a lot of things in it. Of course, Mitsuki going rogue, us seeing a whole bunch of synthetic human beings, pretty much the first time that we do get any sort of hints towards the Kata organization. Not only that, of course, Boruto and Mitsuki having their internal struggles, Boruto getting his summoning jutsu, Onoki's death, just a whole bunch of crazy stuff that happened in this arc that I'm pretty sure a lot of people, if they do go back and watch it, you know, very quickly, people are probably gonna agree with me that it's up here with the time slip, the Gaiden, the Ao arc, and the Sumire arc. Some people might have the Sumire arc at B, but I'm gonna have it at A just for right now. Now the next one is probably gonna have to be the Boro arc. This is gonna be another manga arc. This arc right here is an S tier arc. It's an S tier arc, dog. Now here's the thing, the Boro arc is probably one of my favorite arcs, mainly because it's probably gonna highlight the next generation characters to a different degree. This right here was the first arc that we did get introduced to Boroshiki, the GOAT, and also what was on the line made this arc even better. Like literally, we all thought it was over for Naruto. I'm pretty sure you guys know in the first episode of the Boruto anime, they pretty much say, I'm gonna send you to where I sent the 7th, or Kawaki tells Boruto, I'm gonna send you to where I sent the 7th. We all think Naruto's probably gonna die at this particular point. Naruto's left back in an unfamiliar dimension, Sasuke is pretty much reeling, and out of nowhere, Team 7 plus Kawaki comes in, saves the day, and defeats a Kata member while Momoshiki is pretty much taking over the body of Boruto. This arc right here is definitely one of my favorite arcs, absolutely insane. I'm gonna have to put it at the S tier. Now the next one I'm gonna have to say, is the Byakuya Gang arc. I'm gonna put this at the B tier. This arc right here pretty much highlighted Shikadai. It was super good for the Shikadai and Shikamaru fans out there. So if you guys are fans of Shikamaru and Shikadai, you guys should definitely watch this arc. Now the next arc that I do want to talk about has to be the Steam Ninja Scrolls arc. This right here was kind of like the bootlegged Hidan, I believe, versus Mirai, and it was pretty much like the get back from Mirai and Hidan. I'm gonna have to put it at C tier minimum because just like this one, but it wasn't necessarily as entertaining. This arc right here was pretty much like 90% Kakashi and Might Guy having a vacation and like 10% of actual action. Like they waited till the absolute last episode to give us any sort of action. I absolutely hate it. So I'm gonna put it at the C tier list for right now. The Jugo arc, I'm gonna have to put it at, it's teetering here, bro. It's really teetering. I'm gonna put it at B tier minimum because there's a lot of very good fights in this arc, and of course the infamous Konohama versus Jugo battle was in this arc as well. I'm gonna have to put it at B tier. Interesting stuff. It just was really boring in terms of the actual storyline throughout the whole thing. It was very predictable, you know, it wasn't necessarily anything too crazy, so I'm gonna have to put it at B. The parent and child arc, I'm gonna have to put it at C tier. There wasn't necessarily a lot of action in this arc. Now I'm not necessarily saying that every single arc has to be about action, but this arc right here is pretty much for a certain type of person, a person that really likes to see Boruto and Sasuke basically, you know, spend time with their children. I pretty much don't necessarily care much about that, so I'm gonna put it at C tier. The last one has to be the field trip arc. Now, some people are probably gonna be surprised by this, but I'm gonna actually have this in, matter of fact, I'm gonna put it at A tier. This arc right here, in my opinion, was definitely a very underrated arc. Again, similar to a lot of the other arcs in this episode, a lot of the fights and a lot of the battles in this arc wasn't actually shown. But regardless, this right here is my tier list. Let me know what you guys think about this in the comment section below, and give me your opinions about this tier list. Give me something I did wrong, give me something I did right. Let me know what you guys think. But it's me, your boy BarB, and we out.
It's a knife.